Hey, before we jump in, if you like what you hear on the podcast, check out our free Substack newsletter, The Sober Friends Dispatch. It's a weekly dose of real talk, stories from the sober life, and a little extra support between episodes. Go to soberfriendspod.substack.com and subscribe. That's soberfriendspod.substack.com. All right, let's get into the show. Welcome to the Sober Friends podcast. My name's Matt J. Over there is Steve. And we're here for those of you who are sober curious or are already on the journey to recovery. We got a nice topic today, Steve. We're going to talk a little bit about evidence-based recovery, evidence-based medicine type thing that is on my mind versus AA, which is faith-based. And can those two things be... Can they be compatible? I was going to share something about like kind of my own health right now because I feel like just getting it off my chest. The last 3 weeks have been brutal for me. And here's how they've been brutal. I think I've talked a little bit about how I have restless leg syndrome. It has been under control for the better part of a year. I was put on gabapentin. And then all of a sudden, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, this stuff stops working consistently. And I was waking up every night at, let's say if I go to bed at 10, I would wake up at 12:45 every single night. And my legs, like frogs, kick less than I'm waking up to. If you have restless leg syndrome, you know what it's like. And even though I've had this most of my life, it's very difficult for me to share. Or explain what it is. The only thing I can describe is it is the most uncomfortable feeling you can have without it being pain. It's like an electric current going up your legs, but not. And it makes it difficult to sleep. And this has been, I can fix it in the middle of the night with, if I lay on my back and I kind of fold my legs up and I sit there for about a half hour, it tends to go away. Problem is I've been up for a half hour now in the middle of the night. I've broken my sleep cycle. Yep. And I have been just exhausted. And the allergies have also kicked my ass lately. So I have just been as exhausted as I feel like I've been in years. And it feels like it's starting to break. Part of it is I am not eating as much. We've talked about this a bit. I've been on Wegovy since June, and I am down. I was 273 in June, and now I weighed myself in 245. So I've lost a ton of weight. Mm-hmm. And so there's a school of thought there. I'm getting this because there's a nutrient I'm missing. And I'm also tired because I'm not eating as much. So I'm balancing that. Long story. And then last night I was going to get to bed on time, and then I couldn't sleep till 2 a.m. And I'm in this place where I don't feel like I can get ahead at all. And I'm tired of being tired. I'm tired of this issue. And I've got a referral to a neurologist, so I'm getting there, but I'm just passing along that this sucks right now. Just sick of being tired.
Yeah, it's always difficult to manage everything else when you're not feeling up to par, right?
Yes.
One of the things I've always said that I've been lucky is that I for the most part I've been in good health. Besides, we both talk about our struggles with food and weight and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And other than that, like I don't have any chronic illnesses. Like my wife suffers from chronic arthritis and is in pain. Mm-hmm. And I just know that when I start feeling poorly like you are right now, it is so hard to just navigate life, Mm-hmm. And then you throw on top of it, like you said, all the things that we deal with as alcoholics, all the character defects, all those things, all those bad habits that maybe we had when we would lash out in the past, like those things, for me at least, they start creeping back in, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm less patient, and that's just human nature. But because of my alcoholism, it's a little bit more dangerous for me to sit there. So it's just difficult. It's difficult.
Yeah. I lashed out last night.
Right.
I did a little of that.
I mean, I've had difficult sleeping difficulty sleeping and waking up. I'm an older guy, get up to go to the bathroom, and went to my doctor over because I was started feeling fatigued myself, and I was like, hey, I got a big family cancer history, and I went there and I said, listen, all I do is I want to rule out the big stuff, right? I want to rule out things like I want you to check me for Lyme disease, come in the woods all the time. I want you to check me for leukemia because of my family history with cancers. Like, I want to rule that stuff out. And then we talked about it, and then he talked to me. He's like, how much, how often do you get up? And I'm like, I'm up 3 times a week, 3 times a night. He goes, that's every 2 hours, right? That's about every 2 hours or so. And he's like, yeah, he goes, you gotta cut back your water. I know I always drank a lot of water. He's like, cut back your water. So I really worked hard on cutting my water, and just that difference it's made a lot of difference. And just my ability to sleep, because it's important. It's important to do that. But I love the topic today, science-based over faith-based. Yes. I love it because I've gone through a different, I've gone through I won't say an evolution, but certainly I've gone through a different change of how I look at both of those things since we've been doing this podcast, but certainly since I've gotten sober this time. So I don't even know, like, it's just, the way we do our topics is we don't pick it out in advance. We come here, we throw it out on the table, and then we start talking about it. So exactly where it's going to go, I don't know, but I like the sound of it.
Yeah, so we just opened up a little bit to the audience around if you had this idea that this is well-researched, well thought out, mapped out in advance, now that is not the case, that we just roll with it.
Yeah.
Not a lot of prep going on here.
Nope.
Because we have day jobs. But I have a lot of thought thinking about the evidence-based stuff versus the faith-based stuff and this is kind of where you get all different types of people in an AA meeting.
Yep.
Where you are going to have people who will believe the faith-based stuff as much as it being evidence-based. That it is as evidence-based to them that if you have a sinus infection, you take a certain type of antibiotic and it will flush it out of your system. If you get on your knees every single morning, you are giving the medicine that is proven to treat you for the day so you don't need a drink.
Right.
But that's not really science-based. But it is. In a sense, I look at that and say, but I do know a lot of people who do that, and I do know a lot of those people have really good recovery.
There's a woman who goes to my noon meeting on Wednesdays, and who I like a lot. I mean, I've been going to that meeting for just over a year, and I like her sobriety a lot, and I like how she shares. She's very thoughtful, and she's one of these people that says a lot of things that I think, but I could never get out as eloquently as she can, and like really talk about it. And I listen to her, and I'm just all stuck. Like, yes, that sounds great. And she talks about that. She talks about those people who have that type of faith that you just described, who get on their knees every morning, who give their disease to their higher power. Most of them call their higher power God. Not all of them, but most of them do. And most of them have some type of religious connection, right? They do. That's just the way that most of that goes for a lot of people like that. But she talks about how that's not her. She's very openly agnostic, which I identify as myself today. And she just says, I'm in envy of these people who have that. And that's what I mean. Like, she's like, I wish I was able to find that, but I haven't been able to find that. So the first thing I want to say is, like, we're not dissing anybody if that's your medicine, right? This is not us saying.
This is just sharing our experience.
Right. This is right. This is how we see it, and how we feel it, and how it's worked for us. And we do see, because we go to meetings and we interact with lots of different alcoholics, we see different ways and different paths to that recovery. And this day and age, okay, it's out there. And again, we you more than me, but we're both out there in this social media world, and you're starting to get some of this really good science-based stuff. I mean, I don't know. I know on TikTok, like I send you a bunch of stuff when I see something that might be interesting.
Yes.
I'm assuming you see it. But there are some good follows out there of people who've been doing this for a long time. And, it's the old thing where they say the term alcoholic is starting to some people they're saying it's an outdated term, right? It's an alcohol use disorder, right? Is that because there's a variety, and I believe this too, and I believe this even with alcoholics, which is the way I identify it. But there's a scale of people who come in, right? People who are those low bottom drunks, and people who certainly had a problem, right? Again, not dissing people who had a less of a problem and drank less than me and didn't blow up their whole family, right? And this is the whole thing, like, oh, I don't need AA because, well, when you've done certain things, then it's different. So there's this whole scale of alcoholism out there of how people
a spectrum.
Spectrum, right?
I like the idea of a spectrum.
There is, and therefore, my point is, some of these science-based methods might work better for some of those people, right? And a lot of it is still fairly new, but I think they've made a lot of headway with it. And I think in years to come, you'll see more and more science-based recovery, medicine-based recovery, right? Where you can take a pill to stop cravings and stuff like that. They have those today, but not. I don't think they're as widely as effective as they can be.
I see more and more. I can't find the link to the article. I saw something from National Geographic just this morning about a benefit to Ozempic that I think was pointing towards addiction recovery. We have talked about this in the past.
Yep.
And I see more and more stuff that taking a GLP-1 can have some benefits on addiction. Right. One of the benefits that a GLP-1 has of eating less is it drowns out the food noise. I'm not obsessing on going out for ice cream, and I don't need to eat as much. And there are times that I'll go out for ice cream and I leave half of it. I'm like, I'm done. And that's the same type of feeling I had with drinking, of that craving, that noise. Alcohol noise would be a good way to say that. And there's a growing bit of evidence that if you were put on a GLP-1 like an Ozempic or Zepbound, Wegovy, I think the other one's Mounjaro, they all kind of the same thing, that could actually help you stop drinking, that these might be some miracle drugs. So there are medicines. Like there's, I don't want to say it's Suboxone. I'm trying to think about what Antabuse. Antabuse is one of those that you can take that if you drink, it'll make you violently ill. So there are medicines there. But does it get under the underlying thing? And I'm one of the things I love about going to TikTok is I find these like evidence-based doctor accounts. I'm very careful about what I follow, and I will research what they're saying because I don't want any kind of bullshit. And one of the things they say around heart disease, of course, lower your blood pressure, lower your cholesterol, take a statin if you need to. But that stress is such an impactor on your heart. And there is evidence that meditation can bring your stress level down, just like exercise. Exercise can bring it down, but so can meditation. And we bring this into AA. This is where the prayer and meditation thing comes in. I know people say prayer isn't meditation, it's different. But to me, prayer is a form of meditation. It's just a different, because you can get into a chant of praying,
I agree.
and it brings your blood pressure down. Therefore, there's something in there, even be a faith-based thing, it crosses over into, there's an evidence-based thing.
Yeah. When you were talking, I was thinking, like, one of the things that we talk about, and even the big books talks about, is that if you need, it says just in our literature, if you need medical outside help, go get it. You talk a lot about, we've talked a lot about on this podcast about therapy, going to therapy, right? You talk about your experience with that, talk about mine a little bit less, but because I don't do it as actively right now, but I have in the past. So, psychotherapy, psych therapy is scientific-based therapy, right? I mean, these are doctors for the most part, or sometimes certainly they have a master's, but that is a science-based program where that could help you. So, and then you get into that where you could do the combination, right? You can do some of that outside work with that therapy work, and then you can also do the faith-based stuff, which is AA, right? And that higher power, and do that. So there can be a combination. And truthfully, I think a lot of people do that combination, right? They do that combination. They use outside help. They use medical doctors. They use psychologists. And then they also use the program itself. But the more I look into a lot of that stuff, and the more I've become a bit agnostic, I just look at some of that science-based stuff, and I think there's got to be some really good stuff coming out of that. And again, I'm not into it. I don't follow it that much. I'm sure there's a lot more out there that I'm aware of. But it's one of these things. There's something that's been jumping out on my social media recently, and they've talked about what's happened with the life expectancy of humans, not even American humans, right? And they've talked about this whole thing. They say, oh, you should eat organic. You should eat, this and that. You should eat not a lot of processed foods.
Right.
And they said that humans did that for millennia, right? For hundreds of years, thousands of years. That's all we ate. And this is what has gotten to me, and I'm starting to think more about it. Up until 1850, right? That got us a 35-year life expectancy. That's what life expectancy was in 1850.
Yep.
And then science came in, right? Which is what we're talking about. Then science came in, and disease and germs and sterilizing medical equipment. And all of a sudden, from 1850 now, we got a life expectancy that's, in the 70s or 80s. It depends on what it is. I don't know what it is worldwide. But the point is, science made that change, right? Science made that change. And I think that same science can make a change in addiction recovery now, right? Just like it took a long time, and sometimes things take a while to get going. I think there's a lot of interest around recovery that is science-based, especially, alcohol is still the king, but now with the fentanyl out there and some of these other drugs that really the overdoses are really, really bad, I think there's a lot, there's a lot of interest in it. And the interest in a capitalistic society is there's money to be made.
Correct.
Right? So, yeah, there's companies out there trying to figure this out, because if they can come up with that pill, or if they can come up with that process, there'll be a lot of money to be made on it. So I do believe that the future is bright for scientific-based recovery. And I look forward to watching it as it grows over the next, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, if I'm still alive 20 years from now.
I think a lot of research, a lot of progress hasn't been made on the medical front with addiction, because people in addiction tend to not pay their bills. Yeah. They don't pay their medical bills. And people in recovery stay anonymous, so there's no lobbying group. There's no political action committee out there saying, we need recovery, we need it now, and forcing government officials to do stuff, which is that downfall of being anonymous, that we don't have a political action committee. I think there could be some wisdom there that pushing this and being a collective force might get some progress. That's a thought there. It just, you were talking about the germs thing, and it just clicked that it's not just eating well, because we've done that. It's that we didn't know much about germs, to the point of President Garfield in 1881. He died not really because he got shot, but because people kept sticking their hands in the wound to try and find the bullet, and he lingered for months and died of a painful and horrible death because they didn't realize that they were reinfecting the wound.
Right.
If they washed their hands, he might have lived. A lot of that, being 35 years old, is your life expectancy averages out because so many infants died. And so many infants died because obstetricians didn't wash their hands.
Right.
Simple hand washing was a thing that boosted people's health by decades.
Yeah, absolutely.
This also goes into something Joe and Charlie talk about, and I think about this a lot when people are narrow-minded. Michelangelo was incredibly smart and brilliant. Da Vinci, smart and brilliant, but they didn't achieve what we've achieved today. I don't think we're any more smart. It's being open to new ideas. Nobody has a real unique idea, but you build on the foundation of the last great idea. And in the 20th century, especially, we became more open to new ideas and trying things. That's sort of the scientific method. And we had explosive technological achievements, medical achievements, to the point now where there are even vaccines, potential of vaccines to get a shot and you won't get cancer. That is unbelievable to me.
Right.
And I look back to Bill writing this book of, it was the technology of the time, but it also was the medical knowledge of the time. It was cutting edge at the time, what he was saying is going to help you.
There's a point in the big book, and I don't ever remember exactly where it is, but it talks about, it might be in there's a solution. I don't recall. But anyway, it talks about believing in things that you can't see, like electricity and stuff like that.
Yep.
And then there's a quote. There's a saying in there, like a longshoreman says, I bet you it won't be long before we can shoot a rocket to the moon.
It was 30 years later.
Right. 30 years later. Now, I don't think there was a lot of talk about shooting a rocket to the moon in the 30s.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there may have been in the scientific world, but not in the general public world. And that always stood out to me in that book. It's like, they had no clue how spot on they were going to be.
Right.
And it makes me think the same thing here, right? Just like you said, at the time that he wrote that book, they were doing some stuff, right? The town's hospital, which is where Bill went, and where Dr. Silkworth practiced. Like, they were doing cutting edge alcohol rehab at that time. It would look kind of strange to do it today.
Right.
Back then, it was cutting edge. Back then it was like, what else do? We try anything, right? So they were trying it. So, it's interesting how much, and I know 1930s, late 30s seems like a long time ago, and it somewhat is, but, in the scheme of things, it's not that long ago. It really isn't. Right? There are people, Yeah, people alive today from that era, so it's not that long ago.
No, but the pace of change since then is astronomical. If I look
Right.
back at the history books of 1830
Right.
to 1925,
Yeah.
I don't see it as much as I do 1939 to 2025.
Right. I
I
agree.
mean, astonishing stuff. And medicine, some people, when people get mad at doctors or when there is a medical message that's gone and then the medical message changes based on facts on the ground, it's like they don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
A lot of this stuff that they were doing in Towns Hospital, some of it didn't, a lot of it didn't work.
Hmm?
And some of it did. And that's part of science of you try something, you look at it, you figure out what worked and what didn't. And is there something you can build upon or do you discard it? And I don't think that Dr. Silkworth could figure out what was it Bill was doing spiritually that was working for people. But he was doing something repeatedly the same way and got a different result than what Dr. Silkworth was working. And although he couldn't explain it, here is this unknown variable, and maybe you should keep doing it. Because it seems like more often than not, you're getting a more positive result. So keep trying it if it's working.
Yeah, and I mean that's part of science. Science is a process, right? Science isn't an end, right? And anything, like you said, like
Great way to say. It's a
it is.
process.
It's a process, and that's what I mean. So when new evidence comes into, you can figure out anything you want, but when new evidence shows up, then you have to rethink it. So just because somebody says this is the process, this is the solution that we have today, doesn't mean it's the best solution forever. A perfect example of that is cancer treatments, right?
Yes.
One of the big things in cancer treatments is to keep the patient alive for as long as possible because you never know when the next thing is going to be found to help. So that's the whole point. Like we can't cure it, but we could keep you alive for another 5 years, and then maybe by that time we'll have different therapies that could keep you alive for another 5 years, or maybe we find a cure, or we find that back. Who knows? So that's science, right? That's science. That's the process of science, and so it's a constantly evolving situation. And I do think that that's, if you want to be a skeptic about science, then you could say, oh, like I said, they don't know what they're talking about. Look, they used to say, low-fat diets, right?
Right.
Don't eat any fats, right? And the food pyramid is all messed up, right? Well, they have, things have changed. Nutritional science has changed. So now we realize like what's good and what's bad, and then maybe it changes again. But that's
because you learn a little more,
right? That's the whole point with the science part of it, and that's why and listen, I'm a schooled engineer, so I believe in science. I've always liked science, and that's why I say I look forward to seeing what science can bring to the table. While I'm still around, and I'm interested in following that, and maybe embracing some of that, and trying to help other people find that solution, not just the solution that you and I found.
I have started watching on YouTube a lot of airplane crash reenactment videos. I watch Mayday a lot, where they reenact as a TV show the crash and then what happened and how the investigators figure out why it crashed. And then they talk about here are the things that changed in aviation because of this crash. And I think the thing I love most about it is I'm curious about crashes because I have that morbid fascination, but I'm also curious about what happened. Why did a mistake get made by somebody? And then how did they fix it? Because I also look at, like, growing up, I don't see as many plane crashes as I did in the 80s growing up.
Yeah.
Felt like there were big news stories and stuff. It doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't.
I mean, I don't know how the hell they keep these hulking things in the air, but there are like so many systems, like it's almost that they fly themselves. And if you look back on the 80s, there were certain things that they did flying that they don't know now, because one disaster builds on another and they do something a little bit different. And so, yes, medical science used to use leeches. And they don't use that today. Why? Because they figured it was harmful and there was something else. And then there was penicillin. And then we've also learned that penicillin, if it's overused, loses its effectiveness. That we're never going to be 100% of the way there.
Right. At all.
And I think this is the thing that bothers me sometimes when people look at AA as a cult, which it can be looked at, is the narrowness of focus of you have to do it this way, and this can never change. Where I think it is healthy to question certain things of, if we do this, we'll have a better outcome. Because I want to make sure that we have more people sober, not just how do we protect the process, because this is only a process to keep people sober. And if there was ever something we needed to tweak that we can prove we will get one more person sober easier, we should consider that.
And I think we have, right? I think AA has evolved to do some of that kind of stuff. And I think, there was a time when I first came in, it was like not that long ago, that you could not bring up you were addicted to anything else before and be in an AA meeting. It had to be alcohol only. And I think now we've realized that, there are dual addictions. There are people who struggle with drugs and alcohol. Bill Wilson himself struggled with drugs and alcohol. And I think today some of those changes, they've come slowly, but they have happened. They have come. And I think that has allowed other people to come into our rooms and get help through the process that would not have been welcomed 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so it is changing. And that all depends on where you live and all that kind of stuff. But at least the meetings I go to, it's changing, and those type of changes are embraced. Really, they're embraced. If you come in and say, I'm so and so, and I'm an addict, nobody's going to say you don't belong in this meeting anymore. I mean, again, there may be meetings where they say that, but I don't go to those meetings, and I don't hear that like I used to. So changes are coming, changes are happening, and I think, like I said, we see it. You and I see it, and that's why there's other ways to get sober, and you got to find your own path. You got to find which way you want to go, and AA can be as big a part of that as you want. We talk about it all the time. You don't have to bite. You don't have to swallow the whole program. You can take what you can use and leave the rest. And I know that bothers some people when you say that, but I believe that that's a fair statement, and plenty of people have used that and stayed sober and lived pretty good lives.
And going back to the evidence-based approach, the people I have modeled myself after are people who follow the program pretty religiously.
Yeah, me too.
That rinse and repeat, I did these things, and you see people who did that in a similar way, many of those people have had similar outcomes. I can't measure it although I can't see electricity, I can take some like little tweezers and measure the amperage and the voltage. And I know it's there even if I can't see it. I don't know what those things are called that you measure the electricity, but I can't hook those things up somewhere and measure the presence of God. I can't prove it. I can't disprove it. It may be there, it may not be there, but it's nothing that I can measure, so I don't have that scientific proof. But I do know that the people who have this great faith in them and have this great faith in some way and do a lot of praying, but also do the other things, like keep themselves in check by making amends, by doing the inventory. So like I'm going to walk the walk and not do stupid things going forward. Those people have, by and large, really good sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at the scientific method there is a path that works even if you can't measure that there is something going on. The outcome works.
That's a great statement. I'm glad you brought that up because it works exactly that way for me too. Mm-hmm. Like the people that I look up to the most in the program in AA, right? 'Cause that's where I go, are the people who have that very strong faith-based program. And I agree. And this is what I talk about this woman who that's what she says, like, oh, I wish I had that. I look at all these people and I go, yeah, they have a great sobriety, and they get on their knees every day. And, you know, the people who consistently do that have really good sobriety. And I do look at their sobriety and go, boy, that's good sobriety. And again, people say, well, you can have it too. I don't believe that. That's not where I'm at. And I can't just make myself believe that. So, but I'm glad you brought that up, because as much as I talk about science, when it, you know, that's the people I look at, and that's the people who I too look to and have. Boy, they have a great program.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried to add some of that. I've started. I still don't pray. Maybe I should. My buddy Edson tells me, just pray, throw it out to the world, throw it out to the universe. And but I do meditate now. I try to meditate every morning. Mm-hmm. I do some breathing and stuff with it, which makes it easier for me to have something to focus on. So, you know, I don't know.
I think it's also think broader. John is not a big, Jesus Christ person.
Right.
But he prays to the spirit of the earth, right. The spirit of the religion of the Native Americans.
Yeah.
And there's something there of what is that for me? And as introverted as I am, there is an energy I feel being around people.
Yeah.
There is an energy I feel being in the garden, mowing the grass, throwing grass seed down, that the living things give off something, and the more connected we are to other living beings, the healthier and happier that we are. That's a power greater than me. And Absolutely. If you get just focused on it's got to be Jesus Christ, or it has got to be Muhammad is the prophet in Islam, that you can sometimes talk yourself out of it because you're thinking too literally and narrowly, which is what alcoholics do. So it is okay to think it through of, well, what works for you? Is it going to a concert and you're into music and you appreciate how somebody can play a guitar in a way that you can't, and you get that energy? That's what works for you.
That's it.
Good stuff. All right. So I hope that you are motivated by this. And if you have many different ideas, matt@soberfriendspod.com. I've got emails that I've queued up from people. And because my ADHD has been raging, I look at the emails and I don't go to them because I can't get the energy to I got to read this and then I got to reply. And so I do nothing. So if you reached out, I will get back to you. I just haven't. I'm in an ADHD rut. But we do want to hear from you, of your thoughts, even if you disagree and have a different idea, because in disagreement and in conflict, a better resolution comes along. All right, Steve. Thanks for
Matt.
hashing this one out.
Yeah, good. Good to be with you.
We'll see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.